Imagine walking through a city, a complete city. Roads stretch for miles. Skyscrapers touch the clouds. Schools stand ready. Hospitals equipped with the latest technology. Shopping malls with escalators frozen mid-motion. Parks with benches waiting. Everything's there. Everything except one thing: people. There's nobody, not a single soul, just wind, just silence. Just emptiness that makes your skin crawl. This isn't some post-apocalyptic movie. This isn't fiction. This is Ordos, China. And what happened here might be the greatest economic disaster you've never heard about. I need you to understand something before we go further. What I'm about to tell you isn't just about China. This isn't just about some faraway problem that doesn't concern you. This is about a $300 billion time bomb. And when it finally explodes, your world will shake too. Let me paint you a picture. Ordos, built for 1 million people. Population today? Maybe 100,000. Probably less. 40-story apartment buildings stand completely dark at night. Inside these buildings, furniture sits wrapped in plastic. Kitchens that have never cooked a meal. Bedrooms where nobody's ever slept. Children's playgrounds where swings move in the wind, but you'll never hear laughter. The streets are perfect. Smooth asphalt. Fresh paint on the lines, but nobody drives on them. Nobody walks on them. It's like the entire city is holding its breath, waiting for life that will never come. Now here's what makes this truly terrifying. Ordos isn't alone. It's not some weird exception. Across China, there are more than 50 cities just like this. 50 ghost cities. Some smaller, some even larger. We're talking about infrastructure worth hundreds of billions of dollars. All empty, all useless, all slowly decaying in silence. And the question that haunts me is this: how? How does this happen? How does the world's second largest economy build entire cities that nobody needs? The answer to that question is darker than you think. Take yourself back to the year 2000. China was transforming. Factories were popping up everywhere. Made in China was becoming the global standard. Millions of people were climbing out of poverty into the middle class. The Chinese government looked at this growth and made a decision. They wanted to prove to the world that China was now a superpower. So they started building, not just buildings, entire cities. The construction boom was absolutely insane. There's this statistic that still makes my jaw drop. Between 2011 and 2013, China used more cement than the United States used during the entire 20th century. Let me say that again. 3 years versus 100 years. That's not development. That's obsession. But here's what nobody was asking. Why build so much so fast? The answer lies in understanding how ordinary Chinese people think about money. See, in China, your investment options are extremely limited. Want to put your money in stocks? The market is completely controlled by the government. It's unpredictable and risky. Want to put it in a bank? Interest rates are pathetic. You'll barely keep up with inflation. Want to invest abroad? Forget it. The government doesn't allow regular citizens to move money out of the country. So what's left? Real estate, property, concrete, and steel. And this is where things get interesting. Chinese culture started treating real estate not as a place to live, but as a wealth storage system. Like gold, families would buy their first apartment to live in. Then they'd buy a second one as investment, then a third, then a fourth. I'm not exaggerating. There are families who own multiple properties they've never even visited, never rented out, never used. Just sitting there empty. Why? Because everyone believed one fundamental thing. Real estate prices always go up. Always. It became an unshakable belief. A religion almost. The scale of this belief is staggering. Right now, today, China has 65 million empty homes. 65 million. To put that in perspective, you could house the entire population of France and China as empty apartments and still have space left over, or take the whole population of the United Kingdom. Or South Korea. These aren't homes anymore. They're just concrete boxes storing theoretical wealth. Now here's where the conspiracy gets deeper. The Chinese government didn't just allow this madness. They actively encouraged it. Here's how the game worked. Local government officials in China are judged on one thing: GDP growth. If your city's economy grows, you get promoted, you get power, you get wealthy. So these officials needed growth, fast growth. How do you create fast growth? Construction. Build, build, build. It creates jobs, it moves money. It makes the GDP numbers look beautiful. So local governments would sell land to real estate developers at huge profits. They'd use that money to build roads, bridges, subways. The developers would borrow billions from banks to build apartment complexes. Banks would then lend more money to buyers. Everyone in the chain was making money. Government officials got their GDP growth and their promotions. Developers became billionaires. Bank executives got massive bonuses. Even regular people were getting rich on paper as their property values increased. It was a perfect perpetual motion machine of wealth creation, or so it seemed. But there was one tiny problem that everyone chose to ignore. Who was actually going to live in all these apartments? Who would move to these new cities in the middle of nowhere? What happens when the music stops? Nobody wanted to ask these questions because the answers were terrifying. Real estate in China represents roughly 30% of the entire economy. 30%. Construction, materials, furniture, appliances, all the industries connected to housing. If real estate collapses, it doesn't just hurt property developers. It destroys the whole economic ecosystem. Jobs vanish, banks fail. The entire growth story falls apart. And then came the villain of our story, Evergrande. If this was a movie, Evergrande would be the perfect antagonist. At its peak, Evergrande was the biggest real estate developer in China. Projects in 280 cities. Valued at over $300 billion. Their name was everywhere. Massive billboards in every major city. Success stories in every business magazine. The founder was treated like a visionary. Evergrande represented the Chinese dream. Work hard, build big, get rich. But behind the glossy advertisements was a nightmare. Evergrande was built on debt, mountains of debt. They'd borrowed from everyone. Chinese banks, foreign investors, shadow banking systems. They used that borrowed money to buy land at inflated prices. Land they couldn't actually afford. They'd start construction on massive projects that made no economic sense. Buildings in cities where nobody wanted to live. But here's the truly evil part. They would sell these apartments before they were built. Before construction even started. Families would come in, sign contracts, and pay their life savings up front. Young couples saving for years to afford their first home. Parents using their retirement funds. People betting their entire future on a promise that was built on lies. The house of cards collapsed. Evergrande declared bankruptcy. $300 billion in debt. To give you context, this was larger than the Lehman Brothers collapse that triggered the 2008 global financial crisis. But Lehman Brothers was an investment bank dealing with sophisticated investors. Evergrande had taken money from millions of ordinary Chinese citizens. Regular working people who trusted the system. Think about those people for a moment. Imagine standing in line at an Evergrande sales office. You're nervous, but excited. You're holding papers showing your life savings. Years of work. You sign the contract. You hand over the money. You're shown fancy 3D renderings of your future home. You start planning. Where will the couch go? Which room will be the nursery? You tell your parents. You tell your friends. You dream. And then it's gone. The company declares bankruptcy. Construction stops. The building sits there, half finished. A concrete skeleton. Your money? Vanished. Your dream? Dead. And there's nothing you can do about it. People protested. Of course they did. They gathered outside Evergrande offices, outside banks, outside government buildings. They held signs. They demanded their money back. They demanded justice. And what happened? The Chinese government responded with silence and force. Protests were broken up. Videos were deleted from social media. People who spoke too loudly were arrested. The internet was scrubbed clean. And those half-finished buildings, many of them are being demolished, blown up, because there's no money to complete them and no point in leaving them standing. The solution? Erase the evidence. Bulldoze the dreams. Pretend it never happened. But Evergrande wasn't the only domino to fall. Country Garden, another massive developer, is now in crisis. Shimao Group collapsed. Fantasia Holdings defaulted. These aren't small companies. These are giants that together built millions of apartments, and they're all drowning in debt. All failing. All taking people's dreams with them. Meanwhile, the ghost cities keep expanding. Zhengzhou, a major city, has 200,000 empty apartments. Enough to house a medium-sized nation. Chenggong District was built with multiple universities designed for hundreds of thousands of students. The campuses are beautiful, modern, empty. The students never came. Dantu has an entire district of luxury villas. Swimming pools, manicured gardens, no owners. Nobody's ever lived in them. These aren't just failed investments, they're modern ruins. But unlike ancient ruins that fascinate us with their history, these ruins just remind us of human stupidity and greed. Satellite images tell the story clearly. At night, you can see China from space. Major cities light up bright. But there are these dark patches, massive areas of complete darkness. Those are the ghost cities. Thousands of buildings, millions of square meters of construction. All dark because there's nobody there to turn on the lights. This isn't hidden information. Researchers have documented it. The data is public. But for years, the world chose not to look too closely, because believing China's growth story was easier, more profitable. So now we arrive at the question that should keep you awake at night. What happens next? Does this stay contained in China, or does it spread? Remember 2008. America's housing bubble popped and the entire global economy collapsed. The Great Recession. Banks failed worldwide. Millions lost their jobs. Retirement funds vanished. Countries nearly went bankrupt, and that was just America's housing market. China's real estate bubble is estimated to be 10 times larger. Maybe more. China isn't some isolated economy. It's the factory of the world. Your smartphone? Probably made in China. Your laptop? China. Your clothes? China. Your furniture? China. Global supply chains are deeply integrated with China. If China's economy truly crashes, it creates a domino effect. European markets crash. Asian markets crash. American markets crash. International trade freezes. Companies that depend on Chinese manufacturing scramble. Prices spike. Jobs disappear. Your 401k drops. Your pension fund takes a hit. Everything is connected now. That's modern globalization. When a giant stumbles, everyone feels the earthquake. But here's what disturbs me more than the economics. It's the human element. How did this happen? How did so many smart people, so many experts, so many economists look at the situation developing and do nothing? The warning signs weren't subtle. They were flashing red for over a decade. Reports were published. Academics were sounding alarms. International investors were getting nervous. But nothing changed. Why? Because everyone had a reason to keep the game going. Government officials needed those GDP growth numbers for their careers. Real estate developers were making billions. Bank executives were earning enormous bonuses. International investors were profiting from Chinese growth. And regular Chinese citizens? They were watching their property values increase and felt like they were getting rich. Everyone was complicit. Everyone had their hand in the cookie jar. There's a word that explains all of this: greed. Simple greed. It's the most dangerous force in human economics. Because greed makes intelligent people stupid. It makes people ignore obvious risks. It makes people lie to themselves. The future doesn't matter. Long-term consequences don't matter. Just the profit. Just the growth. Just the money. Now. Look at those ghost cities today. Miles of empty concrete. They stand as monuments to this greed. Physical evidence of what happens when an entire system becomes corrupted. When profit becomes more important than people. When growth numbers become more important than reality. Empty streets that will never echo with footsteps. Empty buildings that will never become homes. Empty promises that destroyed millions of lives. But here's the unsettling question I want to leave you with. Is this just China's problem? Or are we all heading down the same path? London has entire apartment buildings bought by foreign investors and sitting empty. Vancouver has a massive housing crisis partly caused by speculation. New York, San Francisco, Sydney, Dubai, major cities around the world have the same disease. Properties treated as investment vehicles instead of homes. Speculation driving prices beyond what ordinary people can afford. Construction booms disconnected from actual demand. The same greed, the same short-term thinking, the same disaster waiting to happen. Right now, as you're reading this, somewhere in Ordos, an empty building stands in the darkness. 40 stories of concrete and glass. Modern architecture. Beautiful even, but silent. No lights in the windows. No sounds of families. No life, just emptiness. And if you listen carefully to that silence, it's screaming a warning. Showing us what happens when dreams get buried under concrete. When greed defeats logic. When systems forget they exist to serve people, not the other way around. The sun sets over Ordos every evening. Long shadows stretch across empty streets. Perfect roads that lead nowhere. And somewhere in that massive ghost city, among thousands of dark buildings, there's one light on. Just one single light. Maybe it's a security guard making his rounds through empty halls. Maybe it's one stubborn person who refused to leave. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a reminder. A warning light, telling us this is real. This happened. Real money. Real families. Real dreams, all destroyed. And the terrifying truth nobody wants to face is simple. It can happen again. It will happen again. Unless we learn. $300 billion. 65 million empty homes. 50 ghost cities. Behind these numbers are real people. Families who saved for decades. Parents who worked multiple jobs. Children whose futures were stolen before they could begin. Lives destroyed by a system that valued numbers over humanity. Growth over sustainability. Profit over people. And the story isn't over. This disaster is still unfolding, still spreading. The debt keeps growing. The bubble keeps swelling, and somewhere, somehow it's going to burst. The only questions are when and how bad it will be. Because what started in China won't stay in China. This story has just begun.